Hello, welcome to Hypothyroid Chef. I'm Ginny Mahar, your thyroid health and cooking coach, and today I'm excited to share with you some basic knife skills. We'll go through picking the right tool for the job, some basic cuts, caring for your knives, storing your knives, being safe with your knives, etc. Why are we going to talk about basic knife skills? Well, because thyroid healthy cooking means cooking with real whole foods, and that means doing some chopping, some dicing, some slicing, some mincing, doing some dishes. It means doing some cooking. And really cooking real food meals is one of the best things that you can do for your health. It's one of the best investments you can make in you and your family's long-term health and wellness. So, knowing how to use the tools that we have, knowing how to choose good tools so that cooking is more fun and more enjoyable is kind of the goal for today. So we're going to keep it really basic, nothing too fancy. If you are interested in more thyroid-friendly cooking, food, and lifestyle tips, be sure and hit that like and subscribe button. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing is our setup for chopping. I just want to show you this trick in case you don't know about this. You can take a damp washcloth and put it under your cutting board. And that'll just help keep your cutting board in place so it's not sliding around the counter. Pretty important for safety, plus it's just a lot easier to chop that way. All right, next let's talk about the different types of knives. It's important to, just pick the right tool for the job. This is a great tool. This is a paring knife. It's great for small jobs like maybe cutting the core out of a tomato or something like that. It's not really the best job for trying to break down a whole chicken or chop up a winter squash or a sweet potato or something like that. So this is a knife that a lot of home cooks might use for every job, but I think you'll get a lot more done faster, be more efficient with your meal prep when you maybe get into some of these other knives that we'll talk about. So that's a paring knife. This is about the size of a paring knife, a little bit longer, and it's got a serrated edge. This is called a tomato knife. That serrated edge is really handy for slicing through something with super thin skin like a tomato has, where sometimes a smooth bladed knife just can't get through and it'll kind of bruise the fruit. This is called a boning knife. So this is really handy for things like, say you have a whole chicken you want to cut into separate pieces for a sheet pan meal or something like that. This is made to, really break down animal proteins like that. So one thing that makes it different is the blade is flexible and it's also kind of narrow. So that makes it really handy and maneuverable for things like working around a bone. Maybe you've got a roast where you're trying to cut the bone out of the roast or something like that. So a boning knife is a great tool for those jobs. This is what I consider kind of my desert island knife. You can do so many jobs with this. And this is really when it comes to most chopping and slicing and dicing and cutting jobs in the kitchen, you can do pretty much all of it with something like this. This is called a chef's knife. This one has an 8-inch blade. You can get 6-inch, 12-inch, it's what you're comfortable with. For me, the 8-inch chef's knife is, I can do pretty much anything I need to do with it, including some of those small jobs. I've gotten pretty comfortable with it, but I know some home chefs, when they have something like this at first, it feels really big, but I think it's just about having that right tool for the job. So this is just going to have a little bit more functionality than something like this little 4-inch paring knife. And then finally, this is a bread knife. A lot of us are gluten-free. I don't use this a whole lot, but it is nice for, when you're cutting through something tough like a baguette or something like that. It's got that serrated blade. The serrated edge does make sharpening a little bit more complicated. We'll talk about sharpening a little bit as well, but it is nice for, kind of helping to tear through things like crust, or with the tomato knife, things like the thin skin on the tomato. So basic knife anatomy, this is called the handle or the hilt. This part where the handle meets the blade is called the bolster. And then of course this is the blade and this is the edge. So basic grip, especially with something like this chef's knife, a lot of people, hold here on the handle. What you actually want to do is pinch that blade between your thumb and forefinger. You'll get a lot more control and maneuverability out of that. It also kind of moves your hand and that like power more, you're more like in the center of gravity of the power and the cutting power of the knife. So that's just one really like kind of simple thing you can try at home if you have something like a chef's knife, is try pinching that between your thumb and forefinger and see if, your chopping and dicing tasks get a little bit easier and faster for you. Another thing to keep in mind is that a sharp knife is actually safer than a dull knife. When you have a dull blade, and you've got something big and rolly, like that sweet potato or the winter squash or something, and you're really having to bear down on what it is you're trying to cut, that's where we can get into, kind of some dangerous territory with our knives. We want a blade that is kept sharp so that chopping is not only easier and more fun, but also safer, so that when you go to make the cut, your knife can do the job that, it's meant to do. A lot of people have this. This is a sharpening steel. It comes in a typical knife set. This actually isn't going to do the best job of sharpening your knife, but it will hone the edge. And what I mean by that is as we chop, this edge is really, really thin, and the edge can actually start to kind of roll or curl, and this will help straighten that edge out. So, this is, you see like the chefs doing this, and yes, this is handy for honing, but if your knives are really dull and they need a new edge on them, this sharpening steel is not going to do that job. And what's really required for that, you can take your knives somewhere where they'll sharpen them. But what we would use in commercial kitchens is a sharpening stone. So this is like kind of like a file, different grits. Usually there's like 3 different surfaces, fine, medium, and coarse. You keep the stone oiled and you would, run the blade along there. And it's big, it's heavy. It's not the kind of tool that most home cooks are going to keep in their kitchen. I certainly don't. I don't have the room for it. It's just big and heavy and just not something that I really want to deal with. And I want cooking and taking care of my knives to be as quick and easy as possible. So a couple different tools that I really like for sharpening is something like this handheld. This is just a Wüsthof handheld, and you've got a coarse blade here and a fine blade here, and you can just draw the edge of the knife through that. I'd start with coarse, maybe do 10, 20 swipes, and then refine that edge on the the fine. And it's got like a little, it's probably hard to see, but there's like a little stone in there that's going to help put a new sharp edge on that knife. So that works, as kind of like a minimalist option. I did recently ask Santa for this, and I absolutely love it. It's a Chef's Choice 15XV. This is, you plug it in, turn the power on, and you've got your blades and stones actually in here. So I'm not going to turn it on right now because my knives they don't really need to be sharpened, but you just basically turn that on and you run through the various coarsenesses of the, sharpener to go ahead and put a new edge on that knife, and then also, smooth that edge. When you start with the coarse, grinding stones, it can, create a lot of burrs and things. So you want to like smooth that down. You go coarse to more fine. But something like this, you can, damage your knives. So you do, need to read the instructions and follow those instructions carefully to make sure that you're not doing damage to your blades. Because, the thing is, these knives, I absolutely love this knife. It was a gift from my sister, and thank you. I love it. But I've, collected these quality knives over time, and I know they can be an investment, they can be expensive, but the thing is, cooking is something we're doing ideally at least once a day, oftentimes more than that, especially if we're cooking for a family. So we want tools that work. We want tools that last. I'll probably be handing these knives down to my grandkids someday. So these are lifetime tools. So I know, it's easy and tempting to just run out to the discount store and buy a cheap knife set, with 20 knives, and they've got the serrated edge and you don't have to sharpen them. But, they just don't tend to last that long, and they can be really frustrating and they can't be sharpened. So if you can, I do recommend, making an investment in either a quality knife set or just trying to build a quality knife collection over time so that you can enjoy cooking more, so that you're more inclined to do it, so that you can enjoy those health benefits of healthy, whole food, home cooked meals. All right, so let's get into some basic knife cuts. We're going to mince, slice, dice, chiffonade, and julienne. So these are just kind of like the basic things that you would be doing in your home kitchen. We'll keep it pretty simple today. So for most of these jobs, I'm going to be using this 8-inch chef's knife. I did want to show you this tomato knife, just, kind of just a nice to have for things like cutting through that thin skin. Oopsie. But first we'll start with mincing. So this is, mincing is just a very, very fine dice, basically. And this is what we do when we're working with something like garlic, or maybe we want to mince a little bit of shallot up for something like a homemade vinaigrette. So what I'll do here with this garlic clove is first we'll slice through it. Notice I'm pinching the blade between my thumb and forefinger. And here I've got, my grip on the garlic clove. Now there's two ways to do this. I use a pinch grip. That to me is just what I'm more comfortable with. I've tried, through culinary school and lots of, different chefs who tried to teach me the claw grip. That is the other alternative. And a lot of people feel it's safer. You claw your knuckles underneath and use that as a guide. For me, the dexterity of having the pinch grip, I've always just felt more comfortable with it. And I share that because I think that's kind of the most important thing, whether you're using a pinch grip or a claw grip to hold whatever it is you're cutting. Do what feels most comfortable and safest to you. But those are kind of the two basic options for holding whatever it is you're cutting. So I've got my pinch grip. I'm going to slice through this garlic clove first. And then we're going to use this rock and chop motion to mince this garlic clove. So I've got the fingers of my left hand on the tip of the blade. I'll just occasionally swipe that off the blade, kind of put that back into a pile, and then we just keep repeating that process until whatever it is we're mincing is down to the fineness that we're kind of going for whatever our recipe is. This is really great for things like chopping fresh herbs. As I mentioned, garlic, shallots, ginger is oftentimes another ingredient that we're mincing. So yeah, that's about it. So many recipes start with, garlic, onions, and that's all it takes to finely mince a clove of garlic. So I'll set this aside and then work on slicing. Okay, so for slicing, I've got this baby cucumber. Again, we've got our pinch grip here up on the blade, so our thumb and forefinger are above the bolster. The handle is pinched between our last three fingers. And with slicing, there's a couple ways to do it, especially with something really tender like a cucumber. You can, come right down on it. That's fine. If you're working on something a little bit firmer, like say this carrot, one thing to think about is letting the blade do the work for you. So instead of maybe just bearing down, which can over time, be hard on your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder, especially if you're already dealing with maybe some joint pain and inflammation from having hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's. That's just one thing to think about with your cutting, is letting the blade do the work, sliding that across the food. I'm barely using any force here to get through this carrot. So those are a couple different ways that you can slice. Okay, next I'll show you just a basic dice. This apple was in the fridge. I used it for a different cooking video, so I already had the side sliced off of it. But that's kind of something that, a little trick you can do if you're trying to chop something big and rolly and you're worried about, it rolling and you cutting yourself or hurting your knife or whatever. You can take something like, whether it's a potato, a sweet potato, a squash, an apple, and just make a little slice off of one edge so that you've got, more of a firm cutting surface for that food. But yeah, so we'll do like a 1/4 inch dice. So we'll go through a couple slices here, and then we can stack those up. And then again, we'll just go through those like so. Rotate. And there we've got about a 1/4 inch dice of this apple. So to julienne something, a julienne is just basically a matchstick cut. So for something like that, we want to do a thin slice. We're going to go, I'm going for, like, say, a pretty thin matchstick cut on these apples. So it's about an eighth of an inch. And again, we can just slice through those, stack them, and then just go 90 degrees across that. And then what we end up with are these little matchsticks. So that is a julienne cut. And then last but not least, I'll show you a chiffonade cut. I also demonstrated this in my video on cooking with herbs, because this is great for leafy herbs like basil or mint leaves, anything that has kind of a bigger leaf. So I've taken this leaf lettuce and just basically stacked those leaves and rolled them up sort of like a cigar. And then we can just go across that leaf roll to cut up some ribbons. You can go really thin here if you want, but say it was, taco night and you just want some simple shredded lettuce, there you have it. You can use a chiffonade cut for that. So yeah, those are just your basic, kind of everyday simple knife cuts that you would use in most recipes. We've got our slice, our dice, our julienne, our chiffonade, and our mince. Last thing to think about with basic knife skills is just how to care for and maintain your knives. It is a good idea, especially when you're using and investing in quality knives, to keep them out of the dishwasher and wash them by hand. The heat in the dishwasher and those detergents both can be pretty hard on the blade. They can dull the knives over time and just shorten their lifespan. The other thing to think about is storage. So you don't want to just be tossing your knives into a drawer. That's going to be hard on the blade. It's also pretty dangerous. So a lot of people can use a knife block, or there's those, magnetic things you can mount on the wall. You can store them that way. The other thing you can use is a blade cover. So you just slip that blade into this, and then, say you had to just toss it into a drawer, or, a lot of chefs on the go, they'll have their knife roll or a toolbox. This way they can, put those knives, plop them into a toolbox or a knife roll, and protect the edge and protect themselves. This is what we use. I like to keep my knives in a drawer. So this just fits in the drawer. These are little like sheets of cork. And so the knives just kind of fit through there. Really handy, easy to grab. I've liked that system, but yeah, just a few different ways to think about, storing your knives so that they're sharp, so that they last as long as they possibly can, so that the blades are protected, and so that you and your loved one's fingers are also protected. I'll put the links to all the products I showed you today in the description for this video. And if you'd like to harness the healing power of thyroid-friendly eating, I do have a free resource for you. It's my thyroid-friendly grocery guide. It features over 130 delicious, colorful, nutrient-dense foods to choose from that, you can chop, slice, dice, julienne, mince to prepare thyroid-friendly meals. And so you can eat energizing foods so you can thrive, so you can support your cellular health, so you can support your thyroid function and feel your best. So to download that, you can go to hypothyroidchef.com/grocery, or I will also put the link for that in the show notes as well. All right, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Ginny Mahar, the Hypothyroid Chef, wishing you happy cooking, happy thriving, and the best of health. See you next time.